Hello everybody, it's your boy, the excellent reviewer, and he is back, baby.
Feel the power!
Yes, I have returned to doing videos after a little bit of a hiatus, doing some personal stuff, and what a way to come back. I mean, on the topic that we're discussing, I guess you could say it's a real killer comeback. I'm definitely going to hell for that one. So today, I wanted to talk about one of Mexico's deadliest serial killers, who just so happened to be a professional wrestler. So without further ado, let's get down to it. So when we are discussing this case, it's important to say that the timelines, depending on where you get your research, because it is all over the place, that they are a little mixed, but it's believed that the first old lady was killed in around the year 2002, when she was found strangled to death in her own home in Mexico City, where most of the murders would end up taking place. And throughout 2002, there would be more and more murders of elderly women who were all murdered the same way, but the police thought that the murders were unconnected at first, as more and more bodies of elderly women started to pile up as the year ended and we entered the year 2003. You remember 2003, right?
The man's got a lead pipe around his daughter's throat.
So hip-hop hates me, because I don't rhyme about gas, and I'm a white kid rocking throwbacks and pinwheel hats.
What the hell is this? What the hell's supposed to do it, Cole? Oh my God!
Yeah, 2003 was a really weird year. Now, there are some troubling aspects that the police had faced during this time, especially when identifying the killer, because some eyewitness accounts, they varied a lot, with some people saying that there was a man before the murder happened, that there was possibly a woman. Some said that a nurse was present before the scene of the crime, and some people had even said that it could have possibly been a man dressed up as a woman to try and throw the police off their trail. So already the police, they couldn't pinpoint if the killer was a man or a woman. And also, depending on the source, there were some people said that there were some fingerprints lifted at certain crime scenes, but they matched no one in the system database. And keep in mind, when I'm saying all of this, that these murders took place in Mexico City, which happens to be the third most populated city in the world, which, you'll get a kick out of this, includes a population of over 1 million people who are 60 and older. So it could pretty much really be anybody, as the hunt continued for both the police and the killer. As more and more victims were reported in 2003, the press had picked up on the fact that there was a clear pattern that was going on, but the police were very hesitant on saying that this was the work of a serial killer, based on the fact that there hadn't been a serial killer in Mexico in over 60 plus years. So they wanted clear and concrete proof. Even though, I mean, it was pretty clear that this killer was targeting the same kind of people and was killing them the exact same kind of way. You would think that would be enough evidence, but clearly not. Another year went by as we rolled into 2004, and once again, more and more elderly people were dying. The press were putting this intense amount of pressure onto the police and criticizing them for not doing their jobs efficiently, and had even given a nickname to the killer. The name that the killer would have was El Mata Viejitas, which translates to the old lady killer. But as more and more old ladies turned up dead, and once again, they were all strangled, and based off of the eyewitness accounts that the police had gathered, they had finally been able to release a possible sketch of what the killer could have looked like. The police had also learned how the killer was getting into these homes of the elderly, since there were no clear signs of forced entry at any of the crime scenes. The killer would tell the elderly women that they were part of some government program to check in on the elderly, where the killer would usually be dressed up as a nurse. And when the elderly were distracted, that's when the killer would strike, like a wolf eating a rabbit for its dinner. However, as the year went on, El Mataviejitas would continue to evade the police throughout all of 2004 as we moved on to the year 2005, with the police having no suspects whatsoever. Feeling the pressure from the media, the police also made a 3D bust of what they thought the killer could potentially look like, and they held a press conference showing it to the media. And as the heat turned up, especially in October of that year, when the police arrested over 46 people who were either gay or transvestite sex workers. But one by one they were cleared, as there was no clear link to any of them to the crimes. However, as quickly as the murders started, they suddenly stopped that year. See, as the bodies kept on piling up, the police were sending more and more cops out onto the streets so that they could patrol and see if there was anything suspicious that was going on. And for a period of about 5 months, there were no reports of old ladies that had been strangled, which the police thought was pretty strange, because why would this killer stop all of a sudden? And they thought that maybe even the killer had committed suicide. And like Aleister Black's run on the main roster, the killer had seemingly faded to black. Until, guess who's back? Back again. Killing old ladies. Once again. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Like I said, I'm going to hell for sure, but at least I'll finally get to meet Vince McMahon when I get there. But aside from that, we now move on as the year rolls on to January of 2006, where El Mataviejitas would strike one more time. However, unlike the past murders, this would be the final straw for them. See, the old lady that was murdered was renting out a room to a nice young man, and that young man had come home early from work that day, in January, and he actually saw the killer as they left the scene of the crime. Once he went inside the house, he saw that his landlady was dead, and he chased after the killer. And after getting some help from the police who happened to be nearby, which, by the way, that's a hell of a coincidence that they were anywhere near that area. It makes you think that if they weren't near that area, would she have ever been caught? But they were, and they ended up catching her. And it turns out that the killer would end up being a woman by the name of Juana Barraza. And just like that, one of Mexico's deadliest serial killers had finally been caught. Now, in this next segment, I'm going to refrain from using as many jokes as I can, because this is just rough. Juana Barraza was born in Hidalgo, Mexico on December 19th, 1957, and she had a really, really, really rough childhood, as she had an alcoholic and abusive mother who would constantly beat her, and at the age of 12, she had been sold to a man for 3 beers. And depending on the reports, it's all the same that she ended up getting pregnant at a very young age. Some say 13, some say 17. Juana would also go on to have 7 children in total. that she needed to now feed, and without the support of her mother or the people that had gotten her pregnant, she needed to get some money, and she needed it fast. So naturally, she turned to a career in pro wrestling. Now, in case you didn't particularly know, Mexico is one of those places, much like Japan and even here in the United States, where wrestling is seen as this massive sport, the sport of champions, and the people there love it with such a passion that the shows that they always put on every single week were always usually sold out. It seems as though you could literally find wrestling going on anywhere throughout Mexico, and naturally, Juana thought that this would be a good way for her to earn some money, as Mexico is very, very popular with pro wrestling. And wouldn't you know it, she actually enjoyed wrestling. And not only that, but she was actually really good at it. Wrestling was a little bit of an outlet for her because she still had some pent-up aggression from how her mother had treated her throughout all of her childhood. And this was a great way for her to relieve some of her stress. And she even wrestled under the name La Dama del Silencio, which translates to the Lady of Silence, which is really eerie considering, well, However, not much is actually known about her career in pro wrestling. I mean, you probably have, if you ever even remotely seen this story or are interested in it, have seen the picture of her holding a title belt, but in all of my research, I legit haven't been able to find any sort of information about where she even wrestled. Everything was about the murders and things of that nature, so it's very hard to find anything about her pro wrestling career. But it's believed that she actually got really injured one day in the ring, and she actually had amassed quite a bit of injuries. So much so that her doctor had told her that if she kept on wrestling, she would become an invalid. So her career came to an end. But the story has it that one day during a show, she actually had gotten the attention of a fan, and since Juana was a heel, this lady reached out and slapped her across the face. And this lady happened to be an old lady. And this enraged Juana so much that she started killing all these old ladies. But Juana didn't know that this particular old lady was
a stunt granny.
Okay, that last part wasn't real. It's just me going a long way for a shitty bit about the stunt granny. But her wrestling career, in all seriousness, was over. So, with wrestling seemingly out of her life, she worked various odd jobs until the day that her eldest son was actually murdered in front of her when some drunk guys decided to mug him and it got out of control. It's very hard to feel any sort of sympathy for her, considering that she killed all of these old ladies and showed no remorse whatsoever. So the question is posed, why did she do it? Well, see, those mental scars that were left by her mother at such a young age, they had finally come up again, and these old ladies reminded Juana of her mother and the abuse that she went through. So she started to strangle as many old ladies as she could. Her first victim had allegedly insulted her, which sent Barraza into a blind rage, and she killed her. From then on, she would end up racking up a total of 49 victims. And at her trial, she was found guilty and sentenced to up to 759 years in prison. However, this would not be the last time that Juana Barraza would be in the news, because in 2015, she actually ended up getting married. She ended up getting married to a 74-year-old man who was staying in the same prison. And guess what? He was also in jail for murder. And he was so infatuated with her that he decided he was going to shoot his shot by sending multiple letters to her. So, straight off the bat, they're both in there for murder. They both are in the same prison. So naturally, it seemed as though that they were a match made in heaven. However, unfortunately, they would end up getting divorced 1 year later, considering, the fact that during their whole entire marriage, they had only seen each other face to face a total of 3 times. I mean, it really is a shame, because if, Juana had actually stayed in the wrestling business longer than she had, then she probably would have realized that all wrestling weddings usually end up not very happily. And just like that, that is the end of Juana Barraza's story and her grip on all of Mexico and the old ladies. And I know you guys are thinking, whoa, don't make too many jokes about her. She's a human being. And I'm all like, sure, but she killed over 49 old women, so I'm gonna keep on making fun of her. But that's been the end of this video. Do me a favor, let me know what you guys thought about it. Let me know what you guys thought about it. Did you think that this was an interesting story? Do you feel any sort of sympathy for her? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. It is good to be back, guys. I'm telling you that right now. Good to be back. So make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I have been Samuel V, aka The Excellent Reviewer, and I will see you all as soon as I can. Goodbye and good night. Mwah. Bang.